doing too much damage to yourself. There we go. If I made that look harder than it was because I'm not really meant to put hand pressure on my arms right now due to previously aforementioned injuries. Sup kids, how are you doing today? It has been an interesting few weeks, I think, in my own personal life. You know, just with various events, interactions, aligning and presenting, the world at large to me. So I thought, yeah, it'd be nice to kind of chill out, sit down, and, talk through some of those things because I think they're important. One of the things which kind of came up a lot, and this is, millennial wading into online conversations, is something we can't avoid doing. It's what we do. But it's, the whole idea of the Gen Z stare has come to light as a view. I don't know if you've heard of it. Essentially, to explain to anyone who doesn't know, the idea is that Gen Z, as it were, people of that era, I guess it's, people in their 20s, I want to say, maybe earlier. I don't really know when the generations run from. I just don't know. But they're getting a lot of grief online, and they're clapping back because they work jobs and social interactions differently to how other generations work jobs and social interactions differently. And the generations are coming together to say this is wrong and this is right, and of course that's always going to lead to conflict and miscommunication and misunderstandings, and everyone wants to put everyone right about why they are like this or why we are like this. Have you met millennials? We have loads of quirks, self-degradation. That's a high-end millennial perk. Gen X ego much? My TikTok's full of people from Gen X telling me about how they had it harder. They love to tell me every generation before millennials loves to tell people how they had it harder, and now millennials are doing exactly the same to Gen Z. I got sent a video the other day about how we've had it so much harder. And it's like, guys, stop trying to compare trauma. It doesn't work. And it wastes nothing but time. We could be colluding together to make things better, but instead we're sat there just saying, oh, great, I had to walk to school. Oh, I get to take a car. Oh, great. None of this really matters. Why was I thinking about it? I was thinking about it because I also saw a clip from Community, which I thought was fascinating. And the clip was, I believe it's from an episode where they try to get Abed, who is an on the spectrum character, try to get him dating and giving him advice about dating. And they were concerned that they might have upset him by asking him to change on all these ideas. And he kind of purports back to that of saying, well, no, I don't really mind changing for friends. Because, my friends are the people I want to be happy, and this was going to make you happy. And there's a follow-up line, but I'll get further into that as well. But it got me thinking. And, workplace stuff and different egos. One of my main things within a day-to-day is managing egos. It's managing egos and managing expectations. So I do at least feel somewhat capable of talking about people and how they react and how they interact. And I just find it all very fascinating. It's hard not to. It's hard not to look at other people and see how they would deal with a situation versus how you would deal with a situation. And I was chatting a little bit about this with Stacey on the podcast, where we were talking about how you don't really know what any one person is going through or how they might interact with the world around them. If someone's having a bad day in a coffee shop and they're rude to the person at the cashier, the cashier at the till. Like, that's, it's a result. It's a result of the world around them. And the Gen Z stare is a result of the world around them, the world which they've been presented with. And the way millennials basically self-sabotage and drive to a point of absolute self-destruction is a result of the world around them. The way Gen X pushed back against, being educated and following the steps of self-help care and got more into, like, toxicants and all those kinds of things. It's all It's generational trauma, guys. That's what we're all dealing with. But it's interesting. Because I also think it kind of maps through. Like, the reaction which Gen Z are having right now maps to their age range. And I think that's interesting. Because in your 20s, you don't really know much about life. You're experiencing a lot of things in your 20s. You're experiencing things like, probably your first major relationship. People do date people earlier on and whatnot, but first major relationship, one which could last a while, one which maybe, tickles the idea of a future within you and within your partner, or figuring out what a future could hold for you. A lot of that comes in your 20s, and a lot of it comes as well where you're just like, the first major job in your 20s is usually a thing. Up to that point, it's probably a lot of smaller jobs or apprenticeships or little things which got you to that point, and you might have your first major job. And it's a hard balance to strike. People often ask me, how do I balance this? How do I balance this chaos against the idea of having a 9 to 5? I work a 9 to 5. Often more than the 9 to 5. And yet, the rest of my time I dedicate to creation. But then I don't have, I guess, limitations is the way I would probably badly describe it. Such as I don't have children. I don't have a family to look after within the States. I check in with my family on a regular basis to make sure that they're okay. But otherwise, my responsibilities are very minimal. And so I can dedicate to this. But I've been in jobs where I, haven't been able to create. Jobs which working in stores and kitchens and bars, and that's taken all of my time. All my time and my energy, and creation kind of fell to the wayside. And it was sad, and still is sad that is the state of the world, and that people are trapped in those situations. But I turned back to creating as a way of catharsis. I turned back into it to deal with the stress of those situations. And I think that's, one of the reasons why I do what I do when I encourage people is to move through. What was I saying? But I was on about things like jobs. The whole idea of this Gen Z conversation and millennials versus Gen Z and boomers versus millennials is essentially just reaction based, right? It's reaction based, and it's based on expectation. It's based on what we had to deal with as we were growing up. The whole argument from Gen Z is, they don't engage with the public in the same way. I feel like I did a bad job of explaining, so I'm going to re-explain it. So let's say you go to a store, any store, coffee shop or whatever, and there is someone of that generation behind the counter, and you walk in and you try to be polite, try to be a little bit friendly and say, hey, how's it going? And their reaction is null, right? Their reaction is still. It's almost silent, sometimes is silent. They won't really respond with anything other than the defaults of, what would you like? That's it. No, thanks, please. No mannerisms. And yet, when they turn to their friends, turn to people they talk to on a regular basis, that switches there. They become more animated. They become more friendly. They become more what we could say as themselves. And they see it as they've beaten the system, It's so stupid to be small talking. Like, who deals with small talk? I hate small talk. I've heard this a few times. Oh, I hate small talk. I hate making polite. Or people are so two-faced in doing this and having to essentially code switch, Having to be polite. It's slimy. It's suck up. It's untrustworthy. And that's what it speaks to, right? That sentence just there is, it's a lack of trust. And it's a lack of wanting to engage in anything which seems insincere because they have an impression of themselves, which is great, That's the thing I don't understand about millennials not getting it, is like, that's great. You want to remain your true self 100% of the time? Fantastic. Fantastic. But it does present problems. Right? It does present problems. Because what if you need something? I think this is as an older person, and I'm in my mid-30s, and as I say, most of my job is managing egos. Is this whole conversation difference, right, between being insincere and being untrustworthy is seen as manipulation. It is seen by many people, not just Gen Z, especially, even millennials, even boomers. It is seen as manipulation. It is seen as, well, they want to control me, and I don't want to control them because then I'm as bad as them. And yet, the idea of getting your way or convincing someone is just part of human society, right? It's just part of the dance we do to exist as a community. Even through the weekend, I was planning the Zine Fest with Zara and Kat, and we were talking through different zine applications, right? And there was disagreements. There was conversation. There was, I like this person, but, I don't like this, or, I don't think they'd be the right fit, or we already have this. And there was a lot of compromise which went into that situation. And that's natural, right? That's not untrustworthy. That's not insincere. That's taking the capacity of life and going, okay, well, we only have so many tables. We can only fit so many people. So let's get the best range of people from the selection we have to be able to put on a great show. Even in, art and music and bands and all those kinds of collaborations, you make concessions so much of the time. And I wonder if that plays into it. There are a whole generation who feel like they've lost time because of the pandemic. And so the idea of losing more time to anything else is terrifying. And whilst we didn't have a loss of time when we were younger, we still lost time. We still dealt with unusual situations. Even the generation now, they're not in a pandemic, but they're in a world which is on the brink of societal collapse and probable war, like larger war. They have a mental stress. When I was a kid, there was a huge mental stress. The idea of, terrorism and things like anthrax and all these like attacks. And then we also saw the other side of economic collapse, and we witnessed horrific tragedy after horrific tragedy. The scale of tragedies we saw was huge. So it impacts how we behaved within society. And we were also brought up on a generation where the generation before us were insincere. That was the idea. The idea was to be insincere, because the 80s were filled with, fake it till you make it. Put on the costume and the flag and go fake it, you make it. It's the Reagan era. It's the yuppie era from the UK. It's all of those things. So when we saw that, we felt, well, no, we can be nicer to one another, and we can try and push that forward, and we can change the behavior. I realize this is a bit of a diatribe 14 minutes in, but it just got me thinking. It got me thinking about people I've kind of known through my life, through various means, friends, family, workers, all of them. If I don't think this is truly just a generational thing. I think it's actually inherent in human beings for something like the Gen Z stuff. And what I mean by that is, when you meet someone who is so unwilling to diminish anything, because they see it as a diminishment, and I mean that so I've had friends who have very specific ideas about the things which they like, very specific hobbies, very specific interests, and then to suggest that anything else is okay, not good, just okay in comparison, not even in comparison, just to suggest anything else. Like Mel's a great example of this, right? Mel music, of you get people who are really into one genre of music, and everything else is trash. It's stupid. It's corporate. It's a lie. It's not real music. And they'll be like that, especially when they're younger. And then as they grow, and learn that metal is an amalgamation of genres and tastes, they learn and they become a little bit more pliant. But some of them don't, and that's what I mean. Some of them don't. And gradually, their friend circles become smaller and smaller, and their interest groups become smaller and smaller, and they wonder why society has decided that, they aren't part of society anymore. And they'll take validation in that. Some people want that. Some people want to wear that flag, wear that cross, create themselves into a self-martyr. And I've worked with people like it. You kind of get into the situation of not willing to change, not willing to accept in any way, shape, or form. And I'll be honest, they don't last. They just don't. I worked in kitchens where we got introduced to new systems, and they'd collapse. They'd mentally collapse because you changed the system. We don't control the system. We just exist within it. So being cordial to the people around you who are also going through it becomes the key part of society, becomes the key part of community. Get told to turn up and do the thing, so you turn up and do the thing, because turning up and doing the thing helps your friends. It helps the people around you. It's not a lie to yourself. It's not the system winning if you just do what was expected in the first place. It's just a greater expansion of your skill set, is the way to think of it. When it comes to social niceties, I often think of it as I wonder how their interaction goes in the other sense, right? And I brought that back to what we said earlier. What did I say earlier? How the reaction goes in the other sense. Oh, that's it. What if you need something? What if you need help? What if you want to change something? What if you want to change the world? You want to change how the world interacts, right? Right now, we're going through a big social upheaval because there's so many conflicts happening and there's so many different opinions all coming together. Eventually, something's gonna break, and breaks a lot of the time. And one of the main challenges faced is how to present that information. How to sit there and say, hey, I think you're wrong. I think this is right. Most of the time when you present information to people, they do not want that information presented to them with force, right? They don't want that presented to them with a, hey, you idiot, you're wrong. All this, listen to me, no. Because anyone who does that is going to get a negative reaction. And then you're just going to create a deeper divide. And you're going to create a situation where they're going to retreat into themselves, and it's going to become more violent. It's going to become more angry. And sure, there is always a time for those things. But when it comes to day-to-day, casual interactions, that is not the time for conflict. It's a time for community. It's a time to balance between the pair of you, the group of you, and say, hey, yeah, we have vastly disapproving and opposing views to one another. But we can still make coffee. We can still engage in society because we both work, we both live, both exist. I think community and society often forget that part. People get it into their brains of these things need to exist as we have to agree on 100% things all the time. If that was true, societies would never exist. Communities would never exist. Because like I say, things like music taste, food, those things create divides. They create conflict. And you're going to do it if you get a society founded on pizza. And all of a sudden someone suggests a topping which someone else doesn't like. Do you split off? Do you splinter society? No. You just accept that that's part of that. Now, I'm not saying you have to accept atrocities. But when it comes, again, to trivial things, the things which we have agreed as a world generally need to happen in order for us to move forward, that's the case. And it's a case of responsibilities too. I think there's an underestimation of responsibility. There's an underestimation of what it takes really to bring a community society forward. Yes, you can disagree with your job or a company or a group of people and how they operate. But at the core of it, jobs and roles are needed within society because people need a responsibility to contribute to the community. It's up to you which one you choose to go into. It's up to you what you choose to stay in. It's up to you to take that responsibility, and then once you're in it, say, okay, well, I'm here and I'm working. Sure, it sucks. But if I don't, then things like taxes don't happen. If taxes don't happen, things like infrastructure don't happen. Things like infrastructure don't happen, then when I get injured and I go and I try and get repaired, or something's on fire and I need someone to come put out the fire, then what's going to happen? If we all sit and we're all just artists, what happens when your building burns down? No one's learned the skills for that. There's a lot of mixed messages in this episode. But the second line. There's a second line from Community, which really hit me. Hit me as interesting. Because I think when you encounter people who are unwilling to change or unwilling to do their bare minimum, I think it exposes something. And again, it makes complete sense for the generation. The line is, if you're completely comfortable with yourself, then changing, even for a few moments, to try something new or help some friends, is insignificant. Because you know it won't affect anything else around you. So when you encounter people who are unwilling to change, unwilling to engage with small aspects of change, to me, it suggests an enormous scale of insecurity. An enormous scale of, well, if I accept that I have changed in some way, or I put in a little effort, and maybe I'm nicer, or recognize that I have a role to play and have agreed to play that role, then I lose part of myself. And I lose some aspect of me. And they'll change me. And I'll never be able to get me back. And that's incredibly sad. Because, as I think we were saying the other day, again with Stacey, I think, these challenges, like going to work every day, getting things done, engaging with people from different backgrounds and conflicting backgrounds and with different interests to you, and not just disregarding them as, stupid or trivial, is a learning lesson of what humans are capable of. By ignoring all of that and remaining in a space of, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. They don't deserve it. They don't deserve me. And if I do it, then, I'm just one of them. I'm just another peon. you're really missing out on what you could be, and what you could learn about yourself, what you could learn about other people. I think it makes sense for Gen Z. They've gone through a lot. And I worry that they're missing out on the nuances because they are holding on to things for so long. And the same happened with millennials. When we were in our 20s. None of us wanted to shift or change. Let's look at the nostalgic race. It's the exact same thing, but just a different outcome. So terrified of becoming adults and becoming our parents that we got caught in the phrasing and crazing of, well, when I had this when I was younger, and here's all the things I missed out on when I was younger. No, I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to be interested in that because that's what they're into. It's just silly. And I am by no means a person who says you have to love everything. You know, you have to be a company person, or you have to be, willing to engage with all the pop and all the media. No. It's just a maturity which comes with understanding that if you do engage with those things and do meet a societal minimum, everything becomes a lot easier and you learn a lot. Those are just my thoughts. What do I know? I'm an old man. I'm getting older and older. I'm just hoping people learn early enough that some of the ways they're trying to beat the system are going to do nothing but push back on themselves and the opportunities of everything they could be. We only grow through challenge. And most of the time that challenge is something we have to set ourselves. Just a wandering thought. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.